of this alliance is really willing to participate in the sustainability of this project. We've interviewed the alliance board and staff. We've had a chance to review all of the documents related to the grants that you have received, your genesis, if you will. Also, we've surveyed the membership and those who participated in the leadership program. I'm going to give you a little bit of tidbit from that data in just a minute. I'm going to go through it rapidly because I see I only have 15 minutes, but we can talk. I'll be here until tomorrow. Something that was really helpful was the focus groups that we held with the board. That was a very well spent day gathering the insight from the board and getting information from them in terms of possibilities. And also we held a similar focus group with members who had participated in the leadership program, and that was equally as, I think, important, and good information came there. The other thing that we've done is we have reviewed just about all of the competitive programs to look at the pricing models, because it's not only important that you understand what you're capable of doing, but you need to know what the competition is doing such that you can either do it better or at least know what the pricing model that people may want to accept. So what I want to really do is talk about some findings, recommendation, and the further dialogue. And the further dialogue that we have, of course, is trying to get you to respond to those simple questions that I have. You can do it. You can multitask. Even as I speak, you can have that done such at the end of my allotted time, you can pass it to the end of the row and we get it, and we get it back and have the folk to process that. But it would be good to have that additional information. We had 52 people to participate, and as you can see here, the majority of them, of course, were women. Look at the age. It tells us something too, that 55% of the participants were 55 years of older, which means that some of you are going to be thinking about retiring. I've been not listening to your conversations sidebar, but I've heard a few of you even in the halls today saying, you know, I'm thinking about retiring, and I'm saying, okay, this is consistent with the data. But what it also means is that you're going to have some replacements. And as you leave this organization, those of you who are thinking about retiring, you are taking with you a reservoir of wealth and information and talent. And so the question becomes, who is going to follow you? I always tell folk about the institution, you always got to have replacement parts because those of us who are in leadership positions will be off the scene in a couple of years, and if we're not training the next generation of us, we have done ourselves a disservice. Also, if you look at the opportunities with regards to educational level, you see that most of the folk here do have at least a master's degree and some with a doctorate degree. And I think even in that there is room for additional training, because most of these folk have their degrees in the library field, and what you really need to do is to embellish that with some of the leadership training that I've seen in this organization for the last several years. Current positions, I'm seeing as I look at this that there is still room for growth and opportunity. About 50% of the folk who return to survey are in assistant director's position or division head or librarians or what have you. But I think there is room in this data to show that folk are interested in really moving to another level. The other thing, if you look at the number of years in the current position, and if you look at everything to your right, you'll see again about 50% of the population has been there for over 9 years, and as a result of that, transition is going to occur. Another slide here in terms of current position. This is interesting because what we asked is when did you participate in the leadership program, and you can kind of see how that is disaggregated across the years in terms of the participation. 205, 206 seem to have had the greatest. But when you begin to look at what did they participate in, the Leadership Institute, the Library Exchange, the mentoring program, workshops and training, and the HBCU Library Conference, you see a lot of folk took advantage of all the opportunities that you had to offer, but of course the leadership program does stand out. We looked at the status during the program. The majority of participants were librarians. The 36 were library directors, 36% rather were librarian directors. And this is at the participation at the time that these individuals took part in the actual leadership program. Length of time in position at the time of participation. Look at this first one, less than 5 years. That's very telling in terms of what this organization needs in terms of moving forward. And then if you look at the end, 21%, 15 years or more. So what that tells us is that you got a sandwich here, and something has to be put in the middle. And I think the continuity of what you're doing will bode very well for the forward movement of this organization and the training that goes on with this, because as you will see later, the relative agreement about the validity of what folk received is absolutely great, and I think it tells a great story. These are just some things verbatim that participants said about the program. We asked them about the most useful aspect, and you can see, again, I heard Ms. Bayoyan talk about the networking even in her presentation that she did, but also I heard everybody talk about the leadership training, and it's showing in the data as we see it here. Most people did not have any real, and I'm using these terms, substantive disagreements about the validity of this. So it was not so much that they talked about in terms of what was least useful. Most folks said there was nothing that was least useful to them. Few people had some issues with the travel and didn't feel that the mentoring was, but that's just a few. The majority of folk saw something very different. The other question we asked them was, would you agree to participate in the program? Would you agree that your participation in the program has improved various aspects of your leadership, your life, and what have you? And if you look at strongly agree and agree, you will see that an overwhelming majority of the folk felt that this was an absolutely great experience for them. And to me, that's the story that's worth telling, that when you have that many people indicating that this is what they got out of the program. One of the things we're looking at in terms of sustainability would have to do with the method of delivery. And as such, we wanted to know what folk thought. And it's kind of interesting when you look at the demographics as they relate to who participated, and then you look at this slide in terms of how they prefer the delivery. Almost 69% is saying combined. And when we had the focus group, it was almost 90% saying they prefer face-to-face. What that tells me is that while people are amenable to the online and what have you, the networking and the interaction with each other, they learn and gain from that experience. So you may have a program on X, as you saw just a few minutes ago when you're talking about strategic planning, or a module that was being done by the what have you, but people are saying, we like that, but it's the sidebar conversations and the meetings that we have while people are gathered here. I'm sure that some of you have already targeted folk that you're going to talk to this evening over dinner or tomorrow morning or whatever to get information from these sages who are in this organization. We talked about whether or not this helped with career advancement, and most of them did say that it helped them. We asked them to recommend this to a program. Would the program be recommended to another participant? 91%, 98% said yes. So evidently, these people are getting, these participants are getting a lot out of this program that this is worth the time and effort for me to tell a colleague about. And here's the interesting part, because now it's almost like a relationship. You know, someone say, well, I love you. That's what the husband tells the wife, and the wife said, how much do you love me? And then you tell her how much, and she says what? Show me, okay? So being a veteran of 36 years, I know how they go. And I tell young guys, I said, you got to always remember 2 words. Yes, dear. Okay, that works. So we see that people are saying that yes, they will participate, but when you begin to look at how much they're willing to pay, it is a gap, if you will, less than $500. And now the reality is that thanks to Lyrasis and others, we got some good data about what the cost is for these programs. And there's a huge gap between what people are saying they're willing to pay and what the cost is for the delivery of this program. So somehow or another we have to figure out how to bridge the gap. I'm going to run through this relatively quickly. It's basically taking verbatim comments from participants, but what it does, it reinforces for me the validity of this program. It reinforces for me how much folk are getting out of this program, and therein lies the challenge, because folk are actually benefiting from this, but there is this whole gap in terms of our ability to pay for the service that we are in fact getting. And this is just some more. What I want to talk about a little bit now is we've asked the participants to give us some ideas in what they think should be done to sustain this program. And many of them have given us advice, and we factored all of this advice into our recommendations that we shared with the director and the chair and the leadership of the organization. And at the end, we're going to give you, I think, 5 different recommendations that we are looking at. We'll go back and put the numbers in it in terms of what each of these means by way of costs. But I think within these 5 recommendations, we can come up with something that is going to be, I think, amenable to the organization. So again, you can see the comments from individual board members and individuals who participated in the leadership in terms of ideas. We tried to capture that. Now, here's what will make everybody's life easier. If we can go back to Mellon and say, endow this process. You gave us money over the last 3 years. We've done absolutely everything that you've asked us to do. And guess what? We've hit a home run on each one of these programs. We have made a difference. This is a return on the investment. Now, Mellon has been very generous to the organization. But if you look at Mellon in terms of what they are capable of doing and what they have done with other organizations, this is not a big ask for you all. It's how you position it. And so what I'm suggesting is that we compile all of the data in terms of some of the things that we've seen today, and then make the case for a lump sum endowment for the leadership program, and then you supplement that endowment. Don't spend the corporates, just spend the interest off of the endowment to keep this thing going for years to come. The hybrid model is model number 2. What we want to do is really take advantage of some of the things that the participants and the board said that really works. And those things that work, try to find a way to keep those things going, those things that the membership said had the greatest value. So you won't be doing everything, but you'll probably be doing 1 or 2 of the things that you indicated. It also means that you would separate the program costs from the operation costs and focus on how do you fund the program as a separate entity from how do you deal with the overhead and things of that nature. The program costs would have to come from the membership dues, the library dues, and the participants as they enroll into this program. And I think it could be done. There's a model. We'll put the numbers behind this to show that you can do this. Now, basically, you're raising about $40,000 in membership for the last 2 membership cycles. And of course, you have other things that you have to do with the membership dues also. So we got to disaggregate that and begin to say what is feasible. Model 3, I think Loretta helped us with this in terms of conceptualizing this at one of the board meetings of the board focus group, is what we're calling the roadshow model. And that is really, rather than having the events in a single place like this, we take the show on the road. and the expertise of the Alliance would be used to develop the curriculum, and then you essentially would sell that to campuses that would want to host you, and then those in the region would come and participate. And you will expand your base to not only the HBCUs, but to traditionally white institutions. And the cost then will be absorbed by those who who use the service. Because there's some talented folk in this room. I know many of you, not just from the library, but from my association with you in other places. And I know the talent that is in this room. And what you have to do is to harness that talent and sell it to the highest bidder. We also talked about the shared licenses and leadership piece. This raised a few eyebrows, but our job is to give you recommendations. Your job is to decide which one you want. And essentially what this does is take an aggregate model of all the goods and services that you presently buy from folk, form I think you're already a 501c3, so you can use under that umbrella to have the 501c3 negotiate with vendors as a whole, and then try to get some economies of scales based on pricing, and then the salary savings or the cost savings that you have from your conglomerate model you use to fund the leadership program. Also, one of our associates, Dr. Coley, who's at A&T, I don't know if anybody's here from A&T, but she is probably one of the foremost experts on leadership theory. And so what she's done is looked at this in terms of the concept of leadership theory, and she looks at it from what we call the property of leadership and the process of leadership. And what she's thinking is that you would have to use your collective understanding of the property of leadership and then put a value on that and then sell it to the highest bidders. Now what that is really a combination of like the road show. But what you are trying to do in this model is look at what your value added is. What is it that you have as a core competency or competencies as an HBCU Library Alliance? And then you package those core competencies and then take them on the road. The last one, which probably is the model that might make a lot of sense, I can't influence the decision. I'm just going to give the data and the board will make the decision. But this is the model that is used for the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education Leadership and Mentoring Institute that we started back in 2000 and is still going on today. And what we do is really develop an RFP, and we shop that out to institutions to say, do you want to host this? Savannah State hosted it for 5 years. Jackson State hosted it for a year. A&T hosted it for a year. And Miles College, I think, has now hosted it for the last 3 years. And so it's about time for the RFP to hit the street again. But what institutions have found is that by hosting the institution, it gives them value in their community. And so Dr. French at Miles has really marketed the fact that they host this in the community of higher education, and it's a feather in Miles' cap to be associated with that. So essentially what we do is to put out an RFP and say, okay, who wants to host this? What will you contribute in terms of in-kind services? You will not be in the hotel. You'll be on the campus. You will use the facilities of the campus, the residents. Use it when they are not using it so that the cost will go down. You use their food services at a reduced cost. You get different individuals to sponsor various aspects of the event. So what we did in that particular instance, we had one organization to give us seed money. It was AT&T, if you remember. We had an inside person that agreed that this is what we should do. It's always, it's networking, that's what it really is. Someone that you can tell the story to and they understand you. Because a lot of this is, you got to understand that philanthropic organizations, including Mellon, have a lot of folk that's asking them for money. This stuff is about relationships. Who do you have a relationship that believes in the messenger? And so that's what you got to do. Anyway, they gave us $100,000, and then we used chips. I have helped a lot of folk, a lot of organizations, and my comment always is just pay it forward. But when we got ready to do this, we called those chips in, and all of those folk came to the table. So I know that there are folk around the country that you all have done things for, helped. It's time to call those chips in. Get your seed money, and then I went to the meeting last Friday in terms of they were making a report, and actually the conference or the institute actually made money last year. So it's not about breaking even for them. They made money last year. So this model is probably one that can be very palatable in terms of what you're doing. You have the survey there. I hope that you fill it out and send it to me, because what I'm really trying to get at is those of you who have not participated, would you be willing to participate, and if so, how much would you be willing to pay? So that's it, Madam Chair. I would be more than willing to entertain any questions, should there be any. If not, that is my report.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In terms of the American Association of Higher Education,
Blacks in Higher Education, yes.
Is this with HBCU institutions only, or is this?
It's predominantly HBCU, but it's really all of Blacks in Higher Education. Yeah. And some of you may recall that there was an organization on 1 DuPont called the American Association for Higher Education, and they went belly up in right after 2000. And so there were several caucuses, the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, the Gay and Lesbian Caucus, the Native American Caucus, and at least 3 of them formed their own 501c3, and we were one of those.
How many people are we talking about that participate in the region?
Well, we wrote the grant for 25 per year, but we never had 25. It was always 30, 40, and we just found a way to make sure that we included those extra folk into the folds. But the grant was written for 25, and then after the grant period is over, we've been sustaining it at that level or above. Yeah.
Okay, this one final question. Based on your professional advice and your professional experience and the 10 years that we have been in existence, what is your projection and your outlook for the next 10 years in terms of the financial aspect, in terms of what direction you want to go, to keep us going at the rate that we have?
It's almost like a family. You give your children a lifestyle that they're accustomed to based on what you've done. And then all of a sudden they get out in the real world and they say, well, my God, Daddy, can you still help me out, because I want to live at this level versus I'm doing it on my own. So you all have been the family in a sense, under the umbrella of, rightfully you call them Mother and Father Development Foundation, and you've had the best food, the best facilities, and everything else. And I think what you're going to have to do is probably capitalize off the intellectual capital and not worry about the venue. So if an institution decides to host this on its campus and lends its resources to making the conference work, then I would say go for it. So I really think it's going to be a combination, that I would say, a combination of the hosting model along with the roadshow, because if you package what you have, I was just listening to you all speak this morning. I listened to Mary Jo, and I listened to Loretta, and I listened to Miss Phoenix, and I'm saying what you all are saying could be really apropos to any group, not just the librarians. So what you might have to do is do an inventory of what talents that you have, and then put those talents into a talent bank, and then shop those talents around for the highest bidder. So I will probably try to be neutral in terms of what we recommend, because we're just going to send it out there and put the numbers, and I think they'll speak for themselves. But since you asked me the question, I think the last one, along with the roadshow, would probably be the biggest model. While the licensure makes sense, there are those of you who probably don't want to do that because of your own competitive edge that you have with certain vendors. And so it's going to go back to what Dr. Norman said earlier. There's a hole on the right side of the boat. Well, this is everybody's boat, but everybody's going to be focusing on the right side of the boat. So you're going to have to do something that does not create, and then the president of, the chancellor of Baton Rouge said it also, And I think he was sending the message that in this very tight period of fiscal restraints, there are going to have to be some decisions made. And most of the presidents are going to look inward first to take care of what's in-house before they start trying to support what's out of the house. And so those are just the present realities. And so within the context of those realities, we're going to have to figure out how to get this done. I would say that at my old institution, Clark Atlanta, our motto was make a way or find a way. And I would suggest to you all that you might want to adopt that model here, because this Leadership Institute is worth sustaining. And I will say on every podium that I have spoken on in the last 15 years, 20 years, Mary Jo heard me speak on a lot of things, but I always come back to the talent pool. No matter whether you're librarians or provosts or presidents, if you look at the talent pool now, in terms of who's graying and who's balding, and who are doing both in some cases, we know that there has to be some replacement parts. And the only way that we can make sure that it's going to work is that we take the responsibility for training that next generation. So before I sit down, I would probably could not get back to Alabama if I didn't say a great big shout out to our crew. I've already mentioned Janice Franklin. We have Cedric Davis back here too, and Jamal Fisher, right in front of me. Jamal Fisher is another person who has allowed me to come into their fold, and it's a great time to be a Hornet. All right.
I just want to ask one question when you think about sustainability, and I don't know if the organization has thought about this, but just like Paramed and Solomon combined, is there any other organization that the HBCU Library Alliance is thinking about networking with, and is that part of sustainability?
And I think that would have to be the call of the board. Everybody hear a question?
No.
She was saying that is there another organization that this organization could combine with as a sustainability model? And I would suggest that that's something that the board would have to deal with. I did not include this in my model simply because my thinking was that you're trying to figure out how can you do this and maintain your own identity. Because if you married with someone else, it depends on what you bring to the table, whether or not your interest is going to be addressed. And we've seen that over and over again. You look at, a lot of folk don't know this, but if you look at the organization that I told you that we in the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education came from, was the American Association for Higher Education. You also know that there's another organization out there called NAFIO. NAFIO also was a part of the American Association for Higher Education, but they felt that their needs were not getting met, so they broke off. And then you have all these other splinter organizations breaking off, and it's kind of interesting that all the splinter organizations are now still going on, and the mother organization does not exist anymore. But I think there's a lesson even in that as I take my seat. The reason it doesn't exist is because it was a membership organization that did not listen to its members. And once you begin to get away from that which is your base and that which drives you, it's hard to galvanize action, political, economic, or social action, if those that are part of you don't agree with what you are doing. And that's what happened with AAHE. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say one other thing. As the president of the university, I know that you have meetings with your colleagues in various venues. I certainly hope that since you know so much about the HBCU Library Alliance, that whatever opportunity presents itself, that you would mention the HBCU Library Alliance to your colleagues as you meet in their meetings and let them know if they don't know about this organization and encourage them to.
You're a little bit behind time. I already do that. And I've already done that. And we'll continue to do that. And I think I've demonstrated, even as a provost, the support that I have for librarians. It was a little different at CAU because of our structure, but I think we were the biggest of the institutions there. We did our part, even in strange and strained economic conditions. When we were at Savannah State, we had 5 straight years of budget cuts. But I publicly said that, I'll let you tell, let Mary Jo tell me what I said.
Well, he said the library couldn't be touched.
And it wasn't touched. and it was not touched during that time. And the reason I said that is because I believe that the library is really the symbolic heart of any higher education institution. I still believe that. I've already had a conversation with Dr. Franklin. She's already put her issues on the table, and we're going to support her too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As Dr. Silver said, he will be with us the rest of today until tomorrow. And so he will be happy to entertain any questions or comments that you have as he is preparing the report that will be shared with the membership. Now, according to the agenda, we should have an open mic, but I'm going to ask you if we could put the open mic off until this afternoon, because I think that Dr. Blakely, Mr. Blakely has said that he needs to catch his plane at 3 o'clock. And he is our luncheon speaker, and we truly don't want to hold him up. So if you will indulge me, we will have the open mic at the beginning of the afternoon session. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, oh yes, I'm sorry, we're going to lunch now.